Everybody get up, no need to cram now. We got a real jam going down, going down, going down, going down, going down, going down. Welcome to the IntelliGems. Here's your chance. Learn at a glance at IntelliGems.
Adam, happy Monday.
Happy Monday, man.
I think it's your turn. What do you want to jam on?
So, I love Christmas in July. Let's talk Black Friday.
Black Friday in July. Okay, what do you want to talk about specifically for Black Friday?
Okay, so with Black Friday, a big thing that we talk a lot about is, everyone runs discounts. We know that that's a matter of fact. One thing we talk a lot about is like, should you be testing your discounts? Yes, you should. Let's find like the most optimal discount, incremental, something that is both driving sales because great, but also margin maximizing and profit maximizing, because why do we want to give away more discount than we need to? Well, I'm going to take discount testing as a given. Brands should be doing that. If you're not, let's talk about it. I'd love to get in there with you. And what I'd love to talk about actually is building tiers of discounts and more personalized Black Friday experiences and how to, layering different tiers of discounts. I've seen some brands do this really well, and I'm really excited about it. I don't know why every brand isn't doing this, but I don't think very many are. And so would love to talk about layered discounts.
Okay. So when you say layered discounts, layered offers, you mean that there is an experience for certain segments, for certain groups of people, for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, rather than, hey, we're running 40% off site-wide, come and get it.
Exactly. Some people get a free gift, some people get free shipping, some people get 20% off, some people get, 2 free gifts based on a lot of the data that you can generate about what offer incrementality you can perceive. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, so let's jam on this then. So if I'm a brand and I want to put together layered offers for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So at the beginning of this, you said, hey, test offers. That's a given.
Yeah.
You want to get to a profit maximizing outcome. I think what you're saying here is by doing it this way with the layers, you can actually preserve more margin by giving the right offer, the right discount to certain groups. So if I'm a brand, how do I go about figuring out, I guess there's 2 things we need to figure out here. We need to figure out who's the segment and then what's the offer. So how would you go about doing that?
Yeah. So I love this starting point. One thing also maybe foundationally we should talk about is incrementality and what I mean by that, which is let's use a very simple example. Get 10% off of your order versus get 20% off of your order. And let's say we want to know what's better, 20% off or 10% off. Obviously, 20% off is going to drive more sales. More people are going to buy your product when you offer 20% off anything in the store versus 10% off anything in the store. But then the question is maybe some very back of the envelope math would be does it drive 10% more sales? The thinking there is that if you give 10% more off, if I should get 10% more in sales, then that would make up for that incremental discount. That would be on a revenue maximization basis, and you would still end up with the same amount of revenue. What I would argue is that we're missing the profit dimension. And so when we look at incrementality, I think traditionally we often think about incrementality from a profit perspective, from a revenue perspective, not from a profit perspective. And a very easy example here is imagine you only had 15% margins. Giving 10% off means that you're still going to have 5% margins, but at 20% off, you're actually losing money on every sale. And so if you do 20% off, and I mean gross, so obviously most e-commerce brands don't have 85% gross costs basis, but so it's a silly example. But the point that I'm making is that just because you were revenue, incremental on a revenue basis does not necessarily mean you're incremental on a profit basis. So that's point number 1. Then I think that there's this interesting question. It's just let's say right now I'm giving a blended 10% off and I can do a 10% off to everyone. There are probably some people that 20% off has a really high impact on driving volume. And there are probably some people that you don't even need to give 10% off to, and you could give, say, 5% off to, or a free gift, which we've talked in previous times, like why free gifts are so great is because like the actual cost is very low relative to their perceived value. And so what if you had a situation where some people got 20% off to drive volume, some people got 10% off, and some people got nothing? I could end up in a situation where I actually am giving the same 10% off as I was before. So my margin profile is exactly the same, but I've now actually driven quite a meaningful volume of sales because I gave the 20% off to the people who would benefit incrementally from the 20% off. I withheld some additional discount in some of the flows there. I probably didn't need to. We have very, very high intent buyers. And so now actually you could even imagine a situation where I'm driving more volume with lower discount. And so I think if you could figure out how to break this, more discount means more volume paradigm, that would be a huge unlock. And I think you can do that using personalizations and targeting.
I like that. And I think like to add a layer to layers here is
I love that.
The like the 10 versus 20% or just using straight discounts. I think like it makes a lot of sense. And I think like one pushback that a lot of like I'm just anticipating I'm going to say this to a brand. Hey, I don't want like that 20% off person to then leak that to someone else. And I don't want my customers to feel like I'm treating people differently. So like another way to try to like to think about this is, again, there is the perceived value and the actual value. So like, hey, maybe for people who have 3+ purchases and they're like a heavy returning customer, it's like, I don't need to give them 40% off. Maybe there is an exclusive gift, or maybe there is like something else where I can give them something that actually looks like it is worth more than the 20% off that's going to like a new customer, but it actually only has like a $3 cost to me, but that person has to see value in it.
I love that concept of the exclusive gift. Actually, in the area, so if I think about one of the brands that has done this really well, is Momofuku, and they have their core products, which is like chili crunch and noodles, are a large portion of their sales. And one strategy that they use is for people who love chili crunch, I will give you free chili crunch if you try and buy other stuff, right? So it's like, great. And by the way, what we kind of talked about but didn't get there in the question of like you asked it before is how do I know what segments I should offer what to? July 4th and Labor Day are really great opportunities to A/B test what are those discounts, what are those offers. Within the test, you can then see how did different offers and different, 10% off versus free chili crunch versus an exclusive David Chang spoon, or right? Like, how do those different offers resonate with different audiences? And you might see that the people who have bought chili crunch respond better to a free chili crunch offer, and people who have bought noodles respond to free noodles better. And like, cool, that's like really good to know. And now what you're doing too is like getting people to explore the product catalog, and I can create an offer where like to people who bought chili crunch get the chili crunch offer, to people who have bought noodles get the free noodle offer. And like to Facebook traffic, it's something different, right? It's 10% off your first order or something like that, right? So you can create all these different types of discounts based on the audience and the subset of the traffic to create these layers based on, to your point, perceived value.
You said something in there that got me thinking, where it's like, hey, use the 4th, use Labor Day, use these moments where you would normally be trying to like go attract your audience or like bring your audience in, and actually just like facilitate a few different versions. Like maybe do 2 for the 4th, do 2 for Labor Day. And when you said like, hey, I asked the question of like, how do I find those segments, is I now look in these, and like inside of IntelliGems, you can go and kind of like drill down into the specifics. Like I can look at what was happening by channel. I can look at what was happening at returning versus new visitors. So like I can actually just like kind of try these to get like a bigger sample size, and then start to drill down and be like, okay, that exclusive gift was very effective through my SMS channel or through email, but it was not motivating for people through my paid channels. Okay, let's try that for Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Exactly. I actually think, your SMS email channels versus your paid channels, not that SMS and email don't cost you money, but they're like existing user in your CRM versus the net new targeting is a very good example of where there might be a different offer that resonates differently and gets people over the line. And so, yeah, how can I get my existing user base activated? It's probably a very different question than how do I get my, get a new customer or someone who's shopping. Even another version of this was like, we worked with Nate Lagos from Original Grain, and I know we have, I think you've been on his podcast or have had some of IntelliGems users on his pod, but you have the use case of like a guy shopping for himself, or he sells men's watches. A guy shopping for himself versus a partner shopping for her husband or boyfriend. Two very different value propositions and ways that you want to lay that out. And again, to the extent that you can have the gifting traffic with one offer and the self-purchasing traffic with another different offer, or even just framed differently, I just think that like we should be doing a lot more of this, and there's a lot of alpha here.
Yeah. Okay. So at the top, I asked like who and what, and I think we covered like who, like kind of like generally speaking, how to find the segment and like experiment with what to offer. I want to talk about facilitating this for a second. So like if I'm listening to this jam and I'm saying, yo, Adam, that sounds amazing, but like how the heck am I going to get certain customers seeing one thing versus seeing another thing? And I think like I'm actually asking you to kind of like sell IntelliGems here for a second, because I think a lot of people view us as like testing and experimenting, but we actually have a lot of that facilitation of this as well.
Yeah. And I think that like, I would say my bias, and I'm in the tool and I do this kind of stuff all the time, should be really easy. And there's a lot of like components within IntelliGems to set up targeting, whether it's based on some very like automatic pre-built filters that we have. You can do all sorts of custom targeting and then associate that with different experiences. So my expectation is that anyone can do this and figure this out on your own. If you've gotten to this point in the podcast, you're hearing this and you're asking yourself that exact same question that you just asked me, Alex, which is like, how the hell do I do this myself? Please, like, I am Adam at IntelliGems.io. I would love to do it with you. We can like make this a whole jam. You can be on the pod, but definitely reach out to us. And, I would be happy to work with anyone who wants to do that on this as well. So.
Awesome. So TLDR, like you can facilitate these experiments inside of IntelliGems. And in terms of creating the experiences that those customers are going to see, we provide a ton of tooling to allow you to do that. And Adam just offered to help you do it. So either reach out on LinkedIn, Adam at IntelliGems.io. Like let's get someone putting some layered offers together and then get them on the podcast to share it.
I love that. It could be you.